Most people asking this question are thinking about it completely wrong, and I do not blame them, because the way this debate gets presented online, in personal finance books, even by financial advisors, leaves out the most important part of the math. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what nobody tells you when they talk about paying off your mortgage versus investing your money. We are going to run the real numbers, look at both sides honestly, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly what the right answer is for your specific situation. My name is Andrew, and this is what we do on this channel. Let's get into it. Let me set up the scenario first so we are all working with the same numbers. You have a 30-year mortgage at a 6.5% interest rate. You have an extra $500 every month that you could either put toward paying down your mortgage faster or invest in the stock market. That is the question. What do you do with that $500? Now, most people, when they hear this question, immediately feel one of two things. Either they feel the emotional pull of being debt-free, owning their home outright, no bank involved, complete security. Or they feel the logical pull of the math. The stock market historically returns more than a mortgage costs, so obviously you invest. Both of those instincts are capturing something real. But neither one of them is telling you the full story. And the full story is what actually matters when you are making a decision this significant. Let me start with the investing side, because this is where most of the math-first people land. The argument goes like this. The stock market has historically returned an average of around 10% per year over long periods of time. Your mortgage is costing you 6.5%. So if you invest instead of paying down the mortgage, you are making 10% and only giving up 6.5%. A spread of 3.5% in your favor every single year. Over time, with compounding, that difference becomes enormous. If you take that $500 a month and invest it for 25 years at 10% average returns, you end up with roughly $600,000. If instead you put that same $500 toward your mortgage, you pay off your house faster, but you have significantly less in your investment account. On paper, investing wins, and in many scenarios, the math does favor investing. But here's what the spreadsheet does not show you. The first thing the math misses is interest rate risk and the current environment we are actually living in. When mortgage rates were at 3%, which they were just a few years ago, the investing argument was almost impossible to argue against. You were borrowing money at 3% and investing at 10%. That is a no-brainer. But at 6.5%, the spread narrows dramatically. And if rates are even higher than that, the equation starts to shift. More importantly, the 10% historical average of the stock market is not guaranteed. It is an average that includes crashes, recessions, lost decades, and periods where you would have watched your portfolio drop 40 or 50%. The 6.5% you save by paying down your mortgage is guaranteed. Risk-free. Every dollar of mortgage principal you eliminate is a guaranteed 6.5% return on that dollar. You cannot get that in a savings account. You cannot get it in treasury bonds without taking on duration risk. The guaranteed return of paying down debt is more valuable than most people account for. The second thing the math misses is what I call the liquidity trap. When you put extra money into your mortgage, that money is locked into your house. It is not liquid. If you lose your job, if you have a medical emergency, if an opportunity comes along that requires capital, you cannot easily get that money out. Yes, you could refinance or take out a home equity line of credit, but that takes time, costs money, and is not guaranteed to be available when you need it. When you invest that money instead, it remains accessible. A well-funded brokerage account gives you options. Now, some people will say, well, if I pay off my mortgage faster, my monthly payment disappears, and that frees up cash flow. And that is true, but only once the mortgage is completely paid off. Until that point, you are just building equity that you cannot access without borrowing against it. This is a real practical consideration that the pure math argument glosses over. Here's the third thing nobody talks about. The psychological and behavioral dimension of this decision. Personal finance is not just about math. If it were, nobody would carry credit card debt. But people do, all the time, because human beings are not spreadsheets. For a lot of people, carrying mortgage debt creates low-level chronic stress. It affects sleep, relationships, decision-making. If paying down your mortgage faster gives you genuine peace of mind, if it allows you to take more risk in your career, sleep better, feel more secure, then that psychological value is real and it belongs in the equation. On the other side, if you are the kind of person who can invest consistently through market downturns without panicking and selling at the bottom, then the math of investing probably does work out in your favor over a long enough time horizon. The question is, which kind of person you actually are, not which kind of person you think you should be. Now let me give you the framework for actually making this decision, because the answer is genuinely different depending on your situation. The first thing to look at is your interest rate. If your mortgage rate is below 5%, the math almost always favors investing. The spread between your mortgage cost and expected investment returns is wide enough that investing wins even accounting for risk. If your rate is above 7%, the guaranteed return of paying down debt starts to look very competitive with the stock market. Between 5 and 7% is the gray zone where other factors matter more. The second thing to look at is your emergency fund. Before you do either, before you put extra toward your mortgage or invest, you need 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash. This is non-negotiable. If you do not have that foundation, build it first. The third thing is your other debt. If you have any high-interest debt, credit cards, personal loans, anything above 8 or 9%, pay that off before you do anything else. The math on that is completely clear. No investment reliably beats 8 or 9% guaranteed returns. The fourth thing is your tax situation. Mortgage interest is often tax deductible, which effectively lowers your real interest rate. And investment gains in tax-advantaged accounts like a 401k or an IRA grow without being taxed every year. These tax effects can meaningfully shift the math in either direction depending on your specific situation. Talk to a tax professional before making this call. Here is what the truly optimal answer often looks like in practice. And this is the thing nobody says because it is less clean and satisfying than picking a side. The best approach for most people is not either or. It is both in the right order. First, contribute enough to your 401k to get the full employer match. That is a guaranteed 100% return on that money. Nothing beats it. Second, build your emergency fund if you do not have one. Third, pay off any high-interest debt. Fourth, max out your Roth IRA if you are eligible. Tax-free growth for decades is extraordinarily powerful. Fifth, and only after all of that, you start making the invest versus mortgage decision with whatever is left over. And at that point, with a diversified portfolio already growing, a fully funded emergency fund, and no high-interest debt, putting extra toward your mortgage is a completely rational and reasonable choice, even if the pure math slightly favors investing. You are buying security, predictability, and peace of mind. Those things have real value. I want to address one more argument that comes up constantly in this debate. The idea that your house is an investment. I need to be direct about this. For most people, a primary residence is not an investment in the traditional sense. It does not generate income. It costs you property taxes, maintenance, insurance, and interest every single month. Yes, home values generally appreciate over time, but when you account for all the costs of ownership, the real return on a primary residence is often close to zero after inflation. This does not mean buying a home is a bad decision. There are real benefits to home ownership beyond pure financial return. But when someone says, "I am building equity in my home as a substitute for investing," they are making a mistake. Equity in a home you live in is not the same as a growing investment portfolio. One generates future income and compounds. The other just sits there until you sell or borrow against it. So here's the bottom line. If your mortgage rate is low, your emergency fund is solid, you have no high interest debt, and you are already contributing to tax-advantaged investment accounts. Invest the extra money. The math is on your side over a long time horizon. If your mortgage rate is high, you carry the debt emotionally, your job feels uncertain, or you are close enough to retirement that a paid-off house represents meaningful security. Pay down the mortgage. The guaranteed return and the peace of mind are worth more than the theoretical spread. And if you are somewhere in the middle, do both. Split the extra money. Put half toward your mortgage principal. Invest the other half. You get the psychological benefit of watching your mortgage shrink and the financial benefit of a growing portfolio at the same time. The goal is not to win an argument on the internet about which strategy is mathematically superior. The goal is to make a decision you will actually stick to, that reduces your stress, and that moves you toward financial freedom. That is what real wealth building looks like. If this breakdown was useful, subscribe and hit the bell, because next week we are going to talk about the one number you need to know before you make any major financial decision. It changes everything. I will see you there.